You're tuning in to Creepy Time, where we bring you chilling creepy stories and eerie urban legends every. To support Creepy Time, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments so we can discuss the story together. Now, let's dive into today's tale. Strange rules in many apartments. I've always considered myself a grounded person, logical, fact-oriented, anchored in science. I'm a third-year medical student at Riverside College in Texas. My life is labs, lectures, and exams medicine, not mystery. But what happened to me wasn't physical. It was psychological. It defied explanation. It started with a flyer. A ragged piece of paper tacked to the campus housing board outside the biology building. Yellowed edges, slanted handwriting in black marker, swaying slightly from the air drafts in the hallway. I was on my third month of apartment hunting with a student budget. I couldn't imagine anything beyond cramped dorm rooms or overpriced shared housing. The flyer read, "Mini studio, fully furnished, 250 SQFT, $95, week, all included, call now. $235 a month, fully furnished, utilities included, rent that cheap?" My heart jolted. I eyed the average rent in town studios went for at least $450 to $600. Sometimes more. This was half the price. Suspicion flared. This was probably a scam. But I was out of options. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. Maybe it wouldn't connect. Maybe it was a prank. After one ring, a voice like velvet answered. "Hello," it said slowly with a non-nonative accent. "This is Mr. Nolan at Sunny Heights Condos. Are you inquiring about the listing?" "Yes," I said, stammering. "The one for $95 per week. Is that real?" "It is," he replied calmly. "Would you like to see it right now?" 1 hour later, I stood before a beige-hued building midtown at Magnolia Street, 12 stories tall but worn with hairline cracks. A metal sign by the entrance spelled Sunny Heights, though the G and H looked bent, like someone tried to remove them. I shivered without quite knowing why. Inside, Mr. Nolan greeted me, clean-cut, early 50s, salt and pepper hair immaculately styled, pale complexion, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow. "You must be Emma Harding," he said. "Third-year med student at Riverside?" "Yes." I whispered, surprised he knew. He smiled politely. "Come, let me show you the unit." The elevator ride up felt oddly cold. Floors 7 through 9 had buttons marked in red instead of white, and strips of black tape covered them. No noise beyond the hum. "They're under renovation," Nolan said smoothly when I looked at the tape. "Temporary closures." No sounds of workers. No signs of construction. We exited at floor 4. He unlocked unit 408. It was tight, but surprisingly clean tiled floor, modest furniture, small kitchen, mini fridge, even a compact AC unit. Sunlight filtered through a peephole window, giving everything a faint warmth. All utilities, internet included, for just $95 a week, Nolan said. "You can move in this evening if you wish." I asked quietly, "Why so cheap?" He gave me that same neutral smile. "New to the rental market, offering a promotion to law-abiding tenants. You seem responsible." The lease was 2 pages, fast and basic. First week's rent, 1 week deposit. I signed. That night, alone in my new space, key in hand, I sensed something was off. It wasn't wrong, it just felt unusual. The hallway light outside flickered in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The building was silent despite public records showing 30 tenants. No mailboxes, no doorbells, no identifying signage. I texted my roommate back in the dorm, Jake. "Got a place downtown, incredibly cheap. Sounds too good." His reply, "Cool hope it's not a horror movie, lol." I laughed at the time. I should have taken it more seriously. Over the next few days, I unpacked carefully, arranged books, set out my laptop. I lit a lavender candle, not superstition, just habit. I wanted the apartment to smell like home, not like cheap deal. No neighbors introduced themselves. Only sound was a soft mechanical hum late at night. And something else. The building seemed to breathe. Not a metaphor, an actual rhythmic swaying beneath the floor. Subtle expansion and contraction like lungs inhaling stale air. You could feel the floor shift ever so slightly. Inhale, pause, exhale. I chalked it up to old construction at first. But no vents, no ductwork, how did air circulate? So I started a journal. Day 3. Around 3:27 a.m., the elevator moved. Doors opened, no one got off. I peeked, nobody there. Notice the lobby mirror is tilted, just a bit off, like someone shifted it on purpose. Day 5. Finally saw someone. Killy, from floor 10. Hoodie and sneakers, earbuds in. She whispered to me, "Don't ever try floor 8. She laughed, but it wasn't funny. Day 6. The tape over floors 7-9 looks freshly reapplied neatly, like by hand or by machine. Every day, I began to look for other tenants, hopeful for human connection. That's how I met Miss Rivera on floor 5. Her door was often partially open, revealing a studio apartment overflowing with paintings, abstract forms, twisted faces, eyes stretched wide, limbs elongated, a gallery of nightmares in water-washed pastel. When I knocked, she asked gently, "You're the newcomer, right?" I nodded. "You've seen them?" she said quietly. "Seen?" I asked. "The figures in the hallways at night," she answered, without waiting for more. Her tone was calm, matter of fact. At that moment, I remembered the elevator opening on its own, the rhythmic breathing through the floor, the deliberate silence. Miss Rivera said something chilling. "They only knock when they're hungry, but if you follow the rules, they don't eat." I smiled nervously and backed down the hallway. That's when I noticed it. A small brass plaque attached to the inside of my front door. I didn't spot it earlier, but there it was. Follow the rules exactly. Lock your door after midnight. Do not press past floor 6. Do not descend to the basement. Never answer the door if someone calls your name after dark. The engraving looked old, worn but warm under my fingertips. Maybe I missed it before. Maybe it wasn't there back then. Either way, what awaited me beyond that plaque, the creeping dread, the unspoken rules, the distorted entities, was just beginning. In the days that followed, I tried to ignore the plaque. I really did. Maybe it was a joke from a previous tenant. Maybe I was overthinking things. But something about it lingered in the back of my mind, like a whisper I couldn't shake. I told myself rules were good. Rules meant structure, and structure meant safety, so I followed them. I locked the door every night before midnight. I never touched the taped over buttons in the elevator. And when the floor hummed like lungs under my bed, I put in my earbuds and played white noise until I fell asleep. I threw myself into school, classes, study groups, volunteering at the student clinic, anything to stay busy, to stay distracted. The more hours I spent away from the apartment, the more normal life felt. But the moment I stepped back through that hallway, with its 2 clean tiles and oddly silent air, something changed in me. A sense of being watched, not directly, but distantly, like being noticed from behind a 2-way mirror. The strange part was, I started getting used to it. That dull hum, the flickering lights, the way the elevator always seemed to hesitate just a second too long at each stop, it became background noise to me. I told Jake, my old roommate, about it one day. He was in town picking up a friend and met me for coffee. You look tired, he said. Are the neighbors loud? There are no neighbors, I said, stirring my drink. I mean, technically there are, but no one makes noise, no doors open, no one cooks. It's like living in a hotel where no one checks in or out. He raised an eyebrow. Creepy. It's more weird than creepy, like someone's gone to great lengths to keep everything looking fine on the surface. Jake leaned in. Emma, if it's too weird, leave. I know it's cheap, but sometimes cheap comes with a price, you know? I nodded, but I wasn't planning to leave. What was I supposed to do? My bank account barely hovered above zero, and school was draining me in every other way. I couldn't afford another $500 a month place, not with loans already looming. Sunny Heights wasn't comfortable, but it was manageable, and manageable was all I needed. Or at least, that's what I thought. It was around day 12 that the first incident happened. I was coming home late from an evening lab session. The sky was overcast, casting the streets in a dull gray. I stepped into the building, pressed the elevator button, and waited. The doors opened immediately faster than usual. I stepped in alone and pressed 4. The doors closed. But the elevator didn't move. It just sat there. Lights flickered. The display above the door blinked erratically. A high-pitched mechanical whine began, low at first, then rising steadily in volume. And then, without warning, the tape covering floors 7 through 9 peeled back by itself. I froze. No one else was in the elevator. I hadn't touched anything, but there it was, floor 8, unmasked, softly glowing red like an open wound. The elevator suddenly jolted, shuddered, then began to move up, not down. The display flicked 5, 6, then 8. I slammed the 4 button, nothing. Slammed open, still nothing. I watched in horror as the elevator coasted to a stop and the door slid open onto a hallway that shouldn't have existed. It looked identical to mine at first glance, but darker, longer. Dim lights buzzed overhead. The tiles were grimier, and at the far end of the hallway, a figure stood. Not walked. Stood. Still, unmoving, dressed in what looked like hospital scrubs, pale hands at their sides. No face that I could see, just a blur where features should have been. My whole body tensed. Every instinct screamed at me to slam the close button, and I did. The doors resisted for a second, an awful moment of lag, then snapped shut. The elevator began descending again. 7, 6, 5, 4. When the doors opened onto my floor, I bolted. I didn't look back. I fumbled with my keys and slammed the door shut behind me, locked it, twice. Then I stood there, staring at the brass plaque, reading the rules again and again. I had followed them. I hadn't pressed floor 8, but I'd ended up there anyway. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed, eyes on the ceiling, ears tuned to every sound, the hum of the walls, the creak of metal, the occasional thud from somewhere above. And at exactly 3:11 a.m., I heard a knock. Not on my door, on someone's door down the hall. Just once, sharp, deliberate, then silence. The next morning, I saw Miss Rivera again. She was outside her apartment, brushing ash off her doormat. Her arms were smudged with charcoal. She looked tired. I saw someone last night, I said quietly. She didn't blink. Floor 8? I nodded. You didn't get off, right? Number. Good. You get off. You don't come back. I wanted to ask more, but she turned away and closed her door. I stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. It wasn't just an old building with quirks. There was a system, a pattern, and I was now a part of it. Later that week, I passed Killy in the stairwell. She nodded, pulled out one earbud and said, "You heard the knock, huh?" I nodded. "They knock when they're bored. They drag when they're hungry." She didn't wait for a response, just slid the earbud back in and disappeared up the stairs. That night, I left a recorder on outside my door. Call it curiosity, call it stupidity, I wanted proof. I wanted something I could analyze, something I could pick apart logically. I set my phone to record, propped it against the wall, and went to bed. When I checked it the next morning, the audio was mostly silent, except for one sequence around 3:08 a.m., the sound of the elevator arriving, the doors opened, footsteps. Slow, uneven, like someone dragging a foot. Then the knock, 3 times, followed by a voice, low and rasping. "Emma, you left the door unlocked." But I hadn't. I know I hadn't. I checked it. I triple-checked it. Still, I ran to the door, locked, secure, no signs of entry. I played that clip a dozen times. Each time, it chilled me deeper. That voice, it wasn't mine. It wasn't Jake's. It wasn't anyone I knew. I sent it to Jake. He replied 5 minutes later, "That's messed up. Don't stay there. I'm serious." But I didn't leave. Because somewhere deep down, a part of me wanted to know, what was this place? Who was Mr. Nolan? Why were the rules there in the first place? I started walking the halls late at night, quietly, observing. Once, I saw a door on the 6th floor cracked open, with red light pouring out like a furnace. No sound, just heat. Another time, I found a strange bundle of clothes near the laundry room hospital scrubs, torn at the collar, with the name Dr. Pierce stitched in fading thread. There was no one by that name in the tenant records. I checked. I went to the city office, looked up property data. Sunny Heights had been under the same ownership since 1974. No renovations. No floor reassignments. And no building permits for work on floors 7 to 9 because those floors weren't listed at all. In official documents, Sunny Heights had 9 stories, but only floors 1 through 6 were active. The rest were either removed or never built. But I had been to floor 8. I saw it. That meant either the records were wrong or something else was going on entirely. One night, I woke up to the sound of someone whispering directly outside my door. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The voice sounded just like mine. Same cadence. Same rhythm. "Emma, I forgot my key. Let me in." It repeated, again and again. Calm, gentle. "I'm locked out, Emma. It's cold out here." I didn't respond. I didn't make a sound. Eventually, it stopped. The next morning, a single fingerprint was smeared across the brass plaque on my door. An oily, too long print that dragged downward like it had melted. That's when I stopped going to class for a few days. I told my professors I had the flu. I stayed in. I observed. I wrote. The rules weren't suggestions, they were containment. And I started noticing something else. The rules weren't just about what not to do. They were predictors, warnings of what might come next. Like a storm siren that only goes off when it's already too late. I decided to visit the basement. I know, but I had to understand. I waited until noon, broad daylight. I took the stairs down. Basement access was supposed to be for maintenance only, but the door was unlocked. It wasn't like the rest of the building. It was cleaner, newer, too new. Sterile white walls, steel floor tiles, a faint buzzing from the ceiling lights. It felt more like a lab than a basement. And at the very end of the hall, past 4 locked doors and a narrow corridor, there was a room filled with filing cabinets. Inside, I found hundreds of documents, tenant names, medical records, psychological evaluations. Some files were decades old, others recent. I found mine. I hadn't submitted any paperwork beyond my name and ID, but there it was. Emma Harding, med student, compliant, potential for escalation, moderate, watch behavior after floor 8 encounter. I backed away. One drawer was labeled losses, non-compliant, do not report. Dozens of files inside, people who had disappeared. Suddenly, I heard the elevator arriving in the basement. I didn't wait. I sprinted up the stairs, skipping 2 steps at a time, heart slamming. I didn't stop until I was inside my apartment with the door locked and the lights off. I didn't sleep that night, because now I knew I wasn't living in a cheap apartment. I was part of something being monitored. And Sunny Heights wasn't just a building. It was a system, a trap, and I was already inside it. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 full days after I found the file in the basement. I kept replaying it all in my head, the strange fingerprint on the brass plaque, the voice mimicking mine outside the door, the mention of non-compliant losses. But what disturbed me most was the cold, clinical tone of that document about me. Potential for escalation, moderate. I wasn't even a person in that file. I was an entry, a subject, a variable in someone's system. On the 3rd morning, I got a knock at the door. Not the wrong kind, not the middle of the night, voice outside whisper type. A normal knock, mid-morning, sharp and rhythmic. I looked through the peephole. Mr. Nolan. I hadn't seen him since I signed the lease. He smiled when I opened the door, a calm, polite expression, exactly like the first time. Ms. Harding, he said, just checking in. Why? I asked, probably too blunt. He tilted his head slightly. We like to ensure our tenants are comfortable. You've been in your unit for just over 2 weeks now. Some tenants struggle with adjustment. I stared at him, not answering. He looked past me for a moment, into my apartment, like he could see every corner of it without moving his eyes. Then he smiled again. Still following the rules? Always, I said. He nodded once, as if satisfied. Good. Some tenants forget, but the rules are there for their safety. I swallowed hard. What happens if someone breaks them? Mr. Nolan's eyes flicked toward me, and for just a moment, his expression changed, not angry, not scared, just curious. Like a scientist who's just noticed a lab rat behaving unexpectedly. Most don't live to explain, he said calmly. Then he turned and walked away. That night, I stared at the plaque again. Lock your door after midnight. Do not press past floor 6. Do not descend to the basement. Never answer the door if someone calls your name after dark. I had already broken the 3rd rule, and something had changed since then. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been marked, like the building itself had noticed me differently, like I was no longer anonymous. I was curious before. Now I was in danger. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and fear, when it lasts long enough, begins to turn into anger. I needed answers. I needed proof. That night, I did something stupid. I waited until just before midnight. I turned off all the lights in my apartment. I unlocked the door. I sat on the couch, and I waited. At first, nothing happened. Midnight came. I let the clock tick past 12:01, then 12:03. And then, from down the hall, I heard it. Dragging. Not footsteps, not even limping. Something heavy scraping against the floor, slow and steady, like someone pulling a bag of wet sand down the hall. It moved closer. My skin prickled, hair standing up on my arms, but I stayed frozen in place. The sound paused right outside my door. Then, knock. 3 times. Hard. The wood shuddered under it. I didn't move. A voice followed. Not mine this time. Not a whisper. A deep, rasping growl. Emma, it said, You know the rule. The handle jiggled. I stayed silent, didn't breathe. Then the door began to push inward just a fraction of an inch. I had unlocked it, and now it was slowly opening on its own. I jumped up and slammed it shut, twisting the lock as hard as I could. Silence returned instantly. The next morning, when I checked, there were scratch marks on the floor just outside my door. Long black streaks like something had been dragged away or had tried to claw its way in. From that moment, I knew one thing with certainty. The rules weren't arbitrary. They weren't there to control me. They were there to protect me, to contain something. But I couldn't shake the question, protect me from what? That's when I started mapping out the building. Each hallway, each stairwell, each door that didn't open. I created a sketch on the back of an old anatomy textbook, trying to trace every possible route through the building. I marked where I'd seen odd things. The red glowing door on the 6th floor, the faulty mirror in the lobby, the elevator that never made a sound when it moved. I went back to see Miss Rivera, but her apartment door was wide open and she was gone. All her paintings were gone too, the twisted forms, the stretched faces completely vanished, like she'd never lived there at all. In her place, a single chair facing the window, and drawn on the wall in black ink, just 3 words. No one listens. That night, I stopped following the second rule. I pressed a button for floor 7. At first, nothing happened. Then the elevator jolted, groaned, and began to rise. The air grew colder with each floor, the lights dimmer. When it passed 6, the panel buzzed violently, like it was rejecting the command. But then it dinged. Floor 7. The doors opened. It was wrong. The hallway was impossibly long, much longer than the building could physically allow. The floor was sloped slightly upward, the ceiling lower than normal, and the lights buzzed in unison, perfectly synchronized, like breathing again. I took one step out. The moment my foot hit the floor, I felt it a pull, like gravity had reversed itself slightly. I wasn't just walking, I was being drawn in. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, but behind it, I could make out writing. Names, hundreds of names, etched in uneven, desperate handwriting, some scratched in with nails. And then, farther down the hallway, I saw one name in bright red marker. Emma Harding. I ran back into the elevator and pounded the close button. The doors resisted again, just for a moment. Then they shut and the elevator dropped like a weight. When it opened back on floor 4, I collapsed into the hallway, breathless, soaked in sweat. My name was already there. Someone, something had anticipated me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept hearing voices in the walls, not speaking, just repeating sounds. Loops of phrases I'd said mimicked back to me in wrong tones, like a recording being played by someone who didn't understand what the words meant. In the morning, I went to the lobby to find Mr. Nolan. He wasn't there. The office was empty, the desk covered in dust. I checked the drawers, nothing, no papers, no phone, no schedule, just one note taped to the underside of the desk, folded 4 times. You weren't supposed to look. I took the stairs up to floor 10. I needed to talk to Killy. Her door was open a crack, but her apartment was empty too. No music, no earbuds, just her phone lying on the floor, playing the same 3 seconds of a song on repeat. Outside her window, a fire escape that led to nowhere. It just ended, in mid-air, like it had been photoshopped into the real world. I was losing people, or they were being taken. That night, I packed a bag. I wrote a note on my bathroom mirror. If you forget who you are, leave. I stuffed my documents, my laptop, my ID into the bag. And then I opened my door. The hallway was gone. In its place, an endless stretch of concrete, walls covered in mirrors, every reflection just slightly off. My own face lagging behind me as I moved, a reflection that blinked when I didn't. I backed into my apartment and shut the door. The floor pulsed beneath my feet. Once, twice. Then, silence. I sat down and cried for the first time since this started. Not out of fear, but from the realization that I might already be too deep. The building knew me now, and I wasn't sure it was going to let me go. I didn't sleep that night. Too many revelations, too little air. At dawn, I tried the door again. The strange hallway had vanished. In its place, normality. Quiet tiles, my door, the elevator humming softly, as if it was never different, but I knew it had been. I steeled myself. It was time for confrontation. Staying wouldn't keep me safe, it would keep me captive. I packed again just the essentials and set out toward the lobby. I intended to leave, but first I needed to face Mr. Nolan. His office sat behind a glass door labeled Management. The afternoon light made it glow. I walked in. The room was spotless. A single camera in the corner tracked my movements silently. No sign of Nolan, no paperwork, only a desk with a message taped on the chair. We are always watching. You cannot leave. I froze. The words sank in like a weight. Then came the hum, a deep flood, vibrating from basement to roof. The building exhaled. It pulsed. I ran back to the elevator, pressed 4. It ought to take me to the stairs, but the door stayed half open, then slid shut slowly. The panel blinked. Basement. It wasn't supposed to go there. Only I had pressed 4. The elevator groaned, then mirrored the earlier shift, but this time downward. Floors ticked backward. 4, 3, 2, 1. Then B. Doors open onto a corridor bathed in sickly fluorescent light. Rows of closed doors, each painted gray, each numbered. The floor was wet. I stepped out. The air was cold, chemical sharp. Somewhere back, the steel door locked behind me automatically. I slipped a hand inside my pocket. My phone screen lit, but there was no signal. The door to the power room was ajar. Slowing my breath, I walked toward it. Inside, electrical panels with monitors showing grainy camera feeds from every floor. Some screens flickered with static. One showed my apartment door from above, door locked, lights off. Another showed the lobby mirror I had adjusted, reflected no one. A low scratch reverberated behind me. I heard breathing, multiple breaths. Through the corridor glass, shadows moved. Behind the doors, someone was alive or something. Then came a voice over the intercom. You broke the rules. Now you will be returned to compliance. The voice was Mr. Nolan's, though not him distorted, mechanical. I heard wheels, steel casters rolling rapidly. I spun and ran. The corridor seemed to stretch and twist. Doors blurred as I sprinted. My bag bounced. Water pooled under my shoes. The hum grew, squeezing my ears. My vision tunneled. A door labeled stairs lay ahead. I burst through, nearly slipping. I sprinted up stairwells, counting steps. Ghostly echoes of my footfalls chased me. I reached floor 4. Silence returned. The elevator doors were closed again. Nearby, I found a maintenance key labeled motor room. Trembling, I took a deep breath and tried it in the elevator panel, hoping to override something. The control panel lit white and unlocked the tape button 7-9. But as I pressed open, someone grabbed my wrist. I spun. It was Keely, eyes wide with fear, pale face. Behind her, Miss Rivera, painted hands cupped around her mouth, pressing out a silent scream. We can't trust him, Keely whispered. He owns the system. She plugged in her phone to the elevator, a data splitter. We powered on the panel, feeds of basement labs, blinking doors, video logs spanning years. People trying to open flyers, signing leases, then walking down to basement rooms, never returning. We watched one clip labeled Class 2025, a group of students led down, with syringes, files labeled Virus Experiment. My heart hammered. Killy grabbed the headset and screamed into the building PA system. People are watching. They're taking tenants. Stop this or you risk exposure. The hum exploded into alarms. Red strobes lit up. Smoke valves hissed. We sprinted out the elevator, pressing the stairwell door. It opened. We tumbled onto floor 4, dusty. The lobby was empty. We didn't wait, we left. I didn't look back. We didn't stop running until we reached the street and then kept going. I never looked back at Sunny Heights. Police were called. Footprints in the basement corridors, missing tenant reports. Journal entries left behind, some files recovered, experiments halted. Investigations revealed Sunny Heights owner wasn't licensed for medical research. No renovation permits. Basement declared uninhabitable. Several vanished students reported, some resurfaced half transformed, suffering neurological conditions. I never retrieved my deposits. I lost my place, sure, but I kept my life and the data we had. I now share this story to warn you, bargains like that don't just save money, they cost autonomy. Hidden clauses in blank paper leases, masked laboratories, unopened floors, concealed trapdoors. You're not a resident, they see you as subject data. If the rules in a building seem arbitrary, follow caution. They're there for a reason you don't understand yet. Takeaways. Too Good to Be True offers often hide traps, not bargains. Read every line of a lease. Hidden clauses can restrict movement, record behavior, or erase your rights. Follow your intuition. If you sense surveillance, unexplained rules, or silence where activity should be, walk away. Communities matter, share odd findings, compare notes, and always remember, your life is more valuable than saving a few $100s in rent. I'm Emma Harding. I survived, but many didn't. So if you ever see a flyer that seems miraculous, pause. Question. Distance yourself. Your instinct may just be your greatest protection.